Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to make a very brief presentation on migration and mobility. When we talk about migration, what do we mean? We mean the range of patterns of movements of people from one place to another within a particular time frame. Well, historically, when we talked about migration, we meant that people are permanently moving from one area to another. But what we see at the moment is different, is that people tend to straddle between two areas. They move to one area, but they are still members of the places of origin. So they stay into two places. We have seen it, for instance, with our late President Mandela. He struggled between Gauteng and Ngunu. He was in both places until he died. This is what people are doing. Some are staying in Mthatha and Cape Town. Some are staying in Johannesburg and Harare. So they are occupying both places. So when there's a census question which says that everybody must state his place of usual residence, it's becoming very difficult because people don't have one place of usual residence. That's why, for instance, rural areas are complaining that they are always undercounted because these people who are in cities, they also use resources in the places of origin. But in most cases, during time of census, they are not in those places. So some of the places are undercounted at the expense of other places. And many things are making it very easy to occupy two spaces, especially mobile technology. People now in Johannesburg are in contact with their parents on a daily basis, unlike before. Unlike before, people used to write a letter, and the letter would take about 2 months before it gets home, and so on. Now, it's very easy to occupy two spaces. Now, most of Africa is divided between sending areas and receiving areas. And this is because of the post-colonial and post-apartheid Africa, which is replete with inter- and intra-country disparities. When colonists left Africa, they left places that were well-developed and places that were underdeveloped. And in most cases, places that were well-developed were places where they themselves were staying. Then natives were underdeveloped. But that has continued post-apartheid. In fact, it is worse off than it was during independence, because many of the people have left the places that are underdeveloped, have moved towards a more developed areas. And many of the underdeveloped places are living out of remittances from people working in developed areas. Without remittances, there could be mass starvation in poorer areas throughout Africa. Even in South Africa, many people are saying that social grants is what is making poor areas to survive. But studies are showing that remittances are more than social grants. So without remittances, many of these areas would be very poor. Many remittances are leaving Johannesburg, maybe to the Eastern Cape, some leaving Johannesburg to Mozambique, and so on. And those remittances, without those remittances, many of the people would flock to the cities. Thanks to remittances, they are able to survive and they are able to stay put without going to the cities. Now, Migration is part of the world. There's nothing wrong with migration. But the main problem with migration in Africa, it's what is pre-migration transition. It's a one-way stream from underdeveloped areas to developed areas, from rural areas to cities, from cities to metropolitan areas, from metropolitan to the developed countries. It's a one-way stream. Whereas migration in many parts of the world is no longer a one-way stream. For instance, many of the graduates at Harvard, they look forward to go to Shanghai in China and work there. So the problem that we must work with is not so much migration. We need migration. But the issue is that we must force post-migration transition. So movements must not be a one-way stream. Someone, for instance, who stays in Sandton must look for a job in Soweto. And someone from South Africa must have job opportunities in Harare or Lesotho and so on. So there should be a two-way stream. And perhaps by creating centers of excellence in many of these areas, we'll be able to force multiple streams. Many people always say, when they are faced with migration, say, oh, let's develop rural areas, or let's develop poor areas. This is a good intention, but there is a chicken and egg situation. Those spaces are underdeveloped mainly because all the skilled people have flocked to affluent areas. So even if you can push a lot of money, you're not going to succeed. But perhaps even if we create islands of excellence in these poorer areas and be able to attract some skills, the rest of the population are gonna follow those skills. It's not just going to be a development in poor areas overnight. I wanted to touch also to the issue of youth bulge. Africa is experiencing a youth bulge at the moment, as it is having a demographic transition. It is the last place in the world to have a demographic transition. It means that the majority of Africans are young people, and this is a mobile population. We are not going to be able to prevent them to move around, not even if we can employ the army and so on. These are young people, and many of them are looking for opportunities. Instead of trying to prevent them to move around, I say that I am suggesting that we must encourage them to move around. For instance, a graduate student at UCT must not graduate before having stayed maybe in another African country and worked there. The two-way stream process must happen. For instance, students in South Africa, let's use, for instance, video conferencing so that students in South Africa could be lectured upon by a professor based where? In Nairobi or anywhere. And once a while, that professor physically comes to meet his or her student in South Africa, and vice versa. And there, let's kill geography in order to survive. And another point I wanted to say. It's not only that young people are the poorest, are the majority. Young people are the poorest in many African countries because they are struggling to get jobs. Even in South Africa, with social security, there is no social security for young people. These are young people. If we don't have a solution, these people are going to cause the biggest havoc that has ever been seen in Africa. Let's do something beyond what we have thought before in order to make sure that we accommodate young people on the continent. The last point I want to say, there is a term, it's not my term, it says geography is dead. Let's kill geography. Let's make it easy for young people to move across political borders. Even if other people have restrictions, young people should not have restrictions. They must move around the continent. Let's make it easy to travel. For instance, let's create rail links such that someone who's based in Sandton can work during the day in Gaborone and take a public transport to come and sleep home. After some time, he might end up in Gaborone. Let's make it easy to transfer money. It should not be expensive to transfer money, because even if it's cheap through mobile phones, people still have to take a transport to go and cash it. Every village must be able to cash money so that the money can circulate much easier than it is. And as I've said, let's create partnering of institutions. There must be virtual institutions. For instance, Grooteskier could partner with another hospitals, many hospitals all over the continent, and they could have a weekly meetings to share knowledge between those countries. My point is, we must try to kill geography in order to survive. Thank you.